Late last week, Prime Minister Mark Carney gave his first press conference post-election win, and there were a lot of takeaways. Carney sharply shot down the prospect of a formal relationship with the NDP.
Mr. Carney, will you be pursuing a formal governing pact of any kind with the NDP?
No. Short answer, no.
And why not?
Why? That's my response. We campaigned on a very clear set of objectives, very clear policies to back those up, and we received the highest number of votes in Canadian history. Yes, it is not quite a majority, but highest number of votes. As I said moments ago, majorities in 7 of the 10 provinces, seats in all the provinces, highest vote totals and deputy counts in a number of those provinces. And it's also a style of governing as well, which is in order to do what we need to do as a country, we will need to work in partnership with all the provinces, with Indigenous peoples. Yes, obviously, by definition in Parliament, we will need to get majority support to pass legislation. But this is legislation that Canadians, or at least we will be putting forth legislation that's consistent with our platform.
Among other policy announcements, he also said that his government will cap immigration, specifically temporary foreign workers and international students, to less than 5% of Canada's total population.
We will return our immigration to sustainable levels by capping the total number of temporary workers and international students at less than 5% of Canada's population by the end of 2027. That's a sharp drop from the recent high of 7.3%. And this will help ease strains on housing, on public infrastructure, and social services. At the same time, we will work to attract the best talent in the world to build our economy.
He also announced that his cabinet will be sworn in on May 12th, that Parliament will be recalled on May 26th, and that King Charles III will deliver the speech from the throne on May 27th.
In the coming weeks, I will unveil more of our plans to engage with Canadians as we embark on the biggest transformation of our economy since the end of the Second World War. This will be an incredibly exciting time as we take control of our economic destiny to create a new Canadian economy that works for everyone. We will begin to set out that new path for Canada with a new cabinet to be sworn in on the week of the 12th of May and the recall of Parliament on May 26th. We will have the privilege of welcoming His Majesty King Charles III, who will deliver Canada's speech from the throne on May 27th. Her Majesty the Queen will join this visit. This is an historic honor which matches the weight of our times.
Joining us now to unpack the Prime Minister's first press conference is Liberal strategist Andrew Perez. Andrew, thanks for being back with us.
Good to be here.
Now, what should Canadians make of Carney's rejection of having a formal relationship with the NDP?
I don't think it's a surprise at all, and I think it's what Canadians would expect and indeed what they voted for. As Mr. Carney noted, the Liberal Party received its highest vote share in Canadian history, nearly 44% support, more seats in the province of Quebec than ever since the 1980 federal election. And the NDP reached its lowest point in its 64-year history, only winning 7 seats. So Canadians voted for the two major parties, and the NDP was left well behind. And so I don't think there's any desire among Canadians, indeed among Liberal Party voters, for a formal coalition. And we saw that the supply and confidence agreement that Trudeau struck with Jagmeet Singh 3 years ago now, it certainly served a purpose and served a utility at the time, but it also contributed greatly to the downfall in support for the Liberal Party. And so I think Carney is a new leader with a new vision, and he's going to govern with a minority and seek support from all opposition parties on an issue-by-issue basis.
And is this a sign that the Liberal Party could be shifting more to the center? Like, could he possibly work with the Conservatives and seek their support to pass legislation?
It's certainly, and I don't think so much as it's a sign. I think it's a confirmation
Mhm.
of what Mr. Carney has been telegraphing throughout the leadership race and throughout the election campaign. He's put out a variety of economic policies that stand in contrast to Mr. Trudeau. And to your point, there are a number of similarities between conservative policy and liberal policy when it comes to scrapping the consumer carbon tax, reversing the capital gains changes, pushing through west-east pipelines, building large-scale infrastructure projects that are of national interest, building the fastest growing economy in the G7. I think it will be interesting to see. I hope that conservatives will work collaboratively with the Carney government and support them, not in a carte blanche way, but on an issue by issue basis.
Now, another policy announcement in that press conference was the cap on immigration. What's your view on the cap?
So the changes to our immigration system were actually rolled out more than a year ago under the Trudeau government, and reductions were made to both temporary workers and also international students. So capping them to 5%, no more than 5% of the Canadian population. Those two groups had risen to account for over 7% of the Canadian population. And Carney has been clear throughout the leadership race and in the campaign that this was not sustainable. And he's spoken to the need to double the pace of housing construction in this country. I think that housing construction and the supply of housing does have to be tied to our immigration levels, both permanent residents, but also temporary foreign workers and international students. And so I think what you've heard from Carney throughout recent months, but then confirmed in Friday's press conference, is that it was not sustainable. We need to cap immigration levels to pre-pandemic levels and move forward from there. And I think this policy would receive strong support from across the political spectrum in Canada.
And it's also the first time that the monarch will open parliament since the 1950s. What's the thought process behind this invite for King Charles?
So that's right. I think, Mr. Carney, in his very first week as prime minister prior to the election in March, visited the UK for 24 hours to meet with the prime minister. And during that visit, he did go to Buckingham Palace and meet with King Charles. And it's now being reported that in that brief encounter, Carney asked the king, would he be willing to visit Canada this spring to deliver the speech from the throne? And the king agreed at that time. Of course, that was subject to Mr. Carney winning the election. I'd also remind everybody that Mr. Carney enjoys a strong relationship with the British royal family and King Charles specifically as a result of his 7 or 8 years that he spent in the UK as the governor of the Bank of England. And so I think this represents it reinforces our sovereignty as a constitutional monarchy. We are not a republic. And while not all Canadians support the monarchy, I think it will be very symbolic to have the British monarch deliver the throne speech at such a consequential time for Canada. And from what I can gather so far, Theresa, this announcement by Carney has been very well received across the country.
Well, one group of people that aren't super supportive of it is the Bloc, and they've been quite vocal about the fact that they are rather opposed to this. Does this run the risk of souring Carney's ability to work with the Bloc, especially to pass bills?
I hope not.
Mm.
I did see those comments from the Bloc Québécois leader, and I've even seen comments from Canadians in English Canada who don't support the monarchy criticize this. But I think, we have bigger fish to fry at this juncture in our history. And I think most Canadians are eager to differentiate ourselves and our history between Canada and the United States. And one key difference, whether we like it or not, is that Canada is not a republic. We're a constitutional monarchy, and our head of government is not our head of state. We have a differentiation there. And so I think, again, this will be symbolic. And from an international perspective, and from the vantage point of the US and the Trump administration, Trump will not miss this. This will not be a mere detail. I think Trump will get the message that Carney and Canadians are reasserting our sovereignty at this very precarious time in our history.
Now, the prime minister also stated that there will be, quote, no games in terms of when a by-election takes place for Pierre Poilievre. What is your view on having that by-election take place as soon as possible?
Normally I wouldn't expect a liberal leader, a liberal prime minister to call a by-election to facilitate the election of his chief opponent so quickly. At the end of the day, Pierre Poilievre lost his seat, and really there should be no guarantee that he re-enter the House of Commons at the earliest available opportunity. But Mr. Carney, again, defying expectations, clearly establishing himself as a more nonpartisan prime minister, one that doesn't play games, has offered to call a by-election. In this case, it will be an Alberta seat almost immediately to allow Pierre Poilievre to re-enter the House of Commons at the earliest available date. And I think that's been very well received by Conservatives. And it sets a new tone, Theresa, a more nonpartisan tone looking forward. And so I'm encouraged by Mr. Carney's actions on that front.
Well, Andrew, as always, thank you so much for the time today.
Thank you. All the best.